Yes.
All right, I'd like to call to order this emergency meeting of the Pentucket Regional Committee for December 29, 2020. Roll call vote. Emily. Here. Dick. Oh no, Dick's not here. Lisa. Joanna. Here. Wayne.
Yeah.
Chris Markins.
Here.
Chris Redding. Here. Marie. Here. Okay. So let me so it's a 4.0 and let me share my screen. I just want to thank everyone for being on this. I know it's last minute. Also, I want everyone to know that, the superintendent, the health department, they'll, talk. We're just responding for what we have for our capabilities, and there's really no right answer or wrong answer to what we're doing, and we're just trying to do our best. So let's please keep that in mind. So Justin, if you want to. Sure,
and Madam Chair, I really appreciate it. I think what you said is absolutely correct, right? There's no right, there's no wrong. We know how we've been functioning. We've been functioning in the hybrid. We've been using the data as it comes up, and we've been collaborating constantly with our towns. And so, everything we're trying to do is based on what's in the best interest from a health standpoint, because that's going to be the most important for our students and our staff in order to run school. So it's just a really challenging time, which we all know. And the timing of this meeting in particular is important, because if there is going to be a change, if the school committee wants to make a change, we want to make sure families have adequate time in order to make that adjustment. So this is just a presentation, and I'm going to just in the background. So Madam Chair, just so you know, Diane Dardino might be in the waiting room trying to come in as well.
All right.
So just for the audience, you can't see people. There's some people you can't see, like Greg Lebrecht, the business manager, is here. Marianne Naffa, she's the secretary of the school committee. She is here. You also have Bob Danforth, who's head of facilities. You can see him on your screen. Dr. Jarvis, who's the director of director of student services. He's here. And then you also have the assistant superintendent, Brent Conway, who's here. And they're here because if there are questions that come up by the school committee, then they might be able to answer them. So this is just the reason for this presentation. The reason for the meeting today is information that I learned yesterday. There's some data, it's a background to share just so everyone sees and understands the journey that we've had, where we've gone. So we know that Thanksgiving was an active time period. We know that time on Saturday after Thanksgiving, there were 52 active cases in the 3 towns. So that's the baseline for Thanksgiving. We know those have been going up since that point. The baseline for us now during the lull, which was last Thursday, between 3 towns, there are 136 active cases. And just to clarify what that means within a 2-week period, 14 days, there are 136 individual cases between the 3 towns. So I think I've shared that with you quite a bit. I think you have that you've seen that information. We obviously didn't talk about that after the 28th because that was the data that had just come out. But that is where things are right now. That's our baseline. So you can see it has not tripled. It's more than doubled. And that 52 active cases, Thanksgiving was on a Thursday. I believe that might have been November 28th. They didn't have it that Thursday of Thanksgiving. I think they came out the day or two after. So, we know they've gone up. So the question is then, well, how did that happen in our schools? So, Madam Chair, if you go to the next, how did that impact our students? If you go to the next slide, this is what has happened in December for us. So we know, I've informed all the school committee when there's a positive case, I have to call that into the state. So here's been the positive student cases. You can see the 9 at the high school, the 7 at Bagnell, 4 in the middle school, 2 at Page, 1 at Sweetser, 1 at Donahue. Those are confirmed positive student cases. And again, to be clear, this is not a student case. If you're a remote student, we may not know that, and that is something that the state doesn't report because they're curious about students who are physically showing up in the building. If you took, and I don't know, is Diane here now? Have we seen Diane?
She is not here yet.
Okay. If you took September, October, November, and December, I'm sorry, and not December, we had a total of those 3 months. I believe it was 7, 9, or 11. If Diane was here, she could tell you there was a sheet. And again, as I mentioned, because we're streaming a stream, I can't pull the sheets up. But so even if it was 11, you can see just these 3 weeks we've been in school, there's been a significant increase. Now with that, things that are important to note, there's not been any school spread. So it has not gone from student to student. We did have one instance of school spread happening, but it did not take place in any of our buildings. It was an off-campus facility where that took place. There also hasn't been any spread amongst student athletes. We've only been, yes, we've had hockey that had to go on 2 weeks due to a close contact, and we just had JV basketball due to a close contact, but there has not been any spread amongst student athletes. So that's the positive numbers that we've seen. And if you look at it, I think one that really stands out, which I'll explain in a second, is Bagnell. You essentially have an elementary school there that has high numbers compared to when you look at Sweetser and Donahue, which are relatively the same size. I think Sweetser and Donahue might be a little bit bigger because they also have a large percentage of our special education programs. So if you go to the next slide, I'll might be able to explain that a little bit. And this is some of what we learned yesterday. So here's how this has been playing out. West Newbury has a person, a couple people who go through and they do the contact tracing. For those of you watching, the school works with the town. So if something happens, they'll contact us. Sometimes our school nurses get involved and they help out with the contact tracing. West Newbury has its own people, and sometimes they'll ask our nurses to help. So we're able to do contact tracing very efficiently. And West Newbury gets it done on the day of, people know. And the reason why contact tracing is important is because if I am a close contact, I get a phone call, says I'm a close contact, I have to quarantine. If I don't get a phone call, I then go about my business. And if you're a student, your business, you're going about your business might be, I'm going to go to school today where everything's fine. Like you're 6 feet apart, you're wearing the mask, that's fine. And then after school, I might have a friend that's in my bubble. I might hop in a carpool with my friend, be over their house for a little while, talking, doing homework, whatever. And then I go my own separate way. So making sure you have contact tracing is an important part. Merrimack, same thing. Merrimack numbers are higher than they are in West Newbury in terms of population and number of positive cases, but they're able to stay on it within a day or two. Groveland doesn't have an individual that does that. They're working on bringing someone in. So in the meantime, they use the Contact Tracing Collaborative, which is a the state runs this tracing program. And with that, the contact tracing, that means that they're dependent upon whenever the state can do the contact tracing, that's when we find out as a school that someone is a close contact. That's when a student finds out or a faculty member finds out that they're a close contact, whenever the state gets a hold of it. The problem has been this. Yesterday, it was confirmed in my meeting with we had the local health agents. We had our meeting, we didn't have them all there. But the state had told them that they're 6 days behind is their lag. Right now, they're working on cases that are 6 days old. And if you think again to the numbers, to the November number, that Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving, we were at 52. Now we're working off of 135. So if there's an increase, that 6 days is not going to get closer to 5 or 4 or 3 or 2, right? It's going to get further behind. However, I know Groveland is trying to find ways to bring more people in, and I had a conversation today with one of the Groveland officials, not on the Board of Health, but just some ideas that might help. So that is ultimately the big concern. If you go to the next slide, I'll give an example. So this is, and Diane Dardino, who's a public health nurse, is on this as well. She works with the school district as a contract with the school district. But we had a real incident where a student was a close contact on December the 15th. And that student was not notified until December 21st. So in the meantime, that student was with their family bubble and their other families that were within their bubble. And because of that, that student ended up, when they found out they were a close contact, they got tested, they tested positive, and another person also tested positive because that student didn't know that they were a close contact. So this is how contact tracing becomes an issue. If you go to the next slide, Madam Chair. So when we sit back and look at this, and these are conversations, again, I had them yesterday, I had them this morning, I talked to our district physician this morning, along with our lead nurse, and these are our vulnerabilities. So the carpooling that takes place, we know that this happens typically in the secondary. I don't know that it happens a great amount in the elementary, but carpooling, when they hop in, wearing masks, now even if you're wearing a mask, if you're in the car together for 15 minutes more, you're a close contact. Athletics, we know that happens, right? They're going to be in close contact over the period of a game or period of practice. They might be. Students hanging out with friends in their bubble. So I'm not ignorant of the fact that students are social. They should be. And so when they're at home, they might have a friend next door or wherever that comes over. So if I had a friend that I've been in my bubble, I go over their house, they come over my house. So that's a vulnerability. And the pre-K, potentially, because in pre-K, we know they're 3 years old. So they may try to stay apart from each other, but sometimes they come in closer. But again, this is the complications that contact tracing cause us. And I'm going to reemphasize the point that when they're in school, when the children are in school, they're 6 feet apart, they're wearing masks. It's good. We're in school, it's fine. But when we talk about the risk in our community, this contact tracing becomes a pretty significant problem. Go to the next slide, please. So then there's these other realities, and you'll see there's nope. Yep, that's fine. So no, that's okay. So we really did limp into the winter break. So I think everyone here is well aware that parents very, 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 very much, including me, want our children to go to school. We don't want to be remote. 100% on board with that for all the reasons we know. Like, parents have to work. It's important for kids to be home, and it's important for kids to be in school, to see their teachers in person. Totally understand that. The reality was, though, we had people in central office, which is fine, covering for staff because we didn't have enough staff in programs. So we were covering up with everybody, to the extent that even some high school students went through and they only had 4 of their 7 classes. They only had 4 in person. The other 3, they were in the study hall doing their work online because we don't have the capacity or sub pool to cover all the missing. And the other part on this, and Diane, I know she's on this now, I can't tell you right now how many people are close contacts. I don't have that ability. I don't have that ability because that requires you have to go through and do the contact tracing. And so as we get closer to the start of the January 4th, that first day back, I don't know how much staff we're going to have. It could be that we have everybody. I mean, and that's all conjecture. So we can set that aside maybe, but that's important just for everyone to understand. It could be a Wednesday where we just have to say, look, we don't have enough staff. We can't have school. So we definitely limped in. So we know close contacts have kept out a large number. Diane, do you have any idea, or can you give kind of a last number of what you remember close contacts being?
Oh my gosh. You mean the number of close contacts we currently have?
Yeah, ballpark. But this is between staff and students, I think.
So I really don't have an active number. The only one I could give you an active number on is the ones in West Newbury. They're the only ones that are being recorded in Maven.
Okay. And Maven, just so you know, is the state system, and not anybody can access Maven. Only people, public health officials can access Maven. Yeah, so you would only have West Newbury's numbers for close contacts.
So, great. For example, so in West Newbury for the month of December, we have 38 listed close contacts for the month of December.
Okay. So
and our numbers are like 24. So if you
so
put that to Merrimack's 50 or Groveland 63, that's how many close contacts they would have in ratio.
okay, so if we say 24, Groveland 60, so if we just double those, so if it were the same ratio, if you just do the quick math, looks like there's about 150 close contacts. So it's hard to figure out what that would be. This is just a little vignette here, but I know I mentioned this to one or two of you. Had it snowed last week, we didn't have facilities people in place to plow. We had Bob Danforth, and then we had other facilities people who were close contacts themselves or helping out within their family take care of someone who's been impacted. And then the other thing to consider, the other significant challenge are the reasons why the state is saying school is so important. And that goes back to the American Academy of Pediatrics, which we've spoken about quite a bit. And that's students being at home, they not having that social interaction has a negative impact on their mental health, on their well-being. And that's why the state has been so adamant about making sure students are in school. So those are some other of the significant challenges. And if you go to the next slide. So other just information to know before we get going on any conversations. It's what we don't have right now. I have no data to give you. I can speak about what the state data says, and you've heard me say the numbers already. What the Thanksgiving numbers were, what the last Thursday's number were. You saw the numbers of the students compared to what it was the first 3 months, right? So we know those are increases, but the data, we are not going to experience that data is not going to come to us for another week or two. So a decision now is not going to be based on, we know for certain that this is going to happen. It would be based on a best guess. And part of that is we all know, we've heard about the potential surge. And it stands to reason. We saw it happen, right? We saw it happen with Thanksgiving moving in, not the week after, but the week after that, this number started to get really big. I've said this already, but we've not had school spread. And the other part of this is that there is plenty of evidence to suggest that if students were to stay home, there would be an increased spread among children, because if my children had to stay home and they were younger and I had to go to work and my wife had to go to work, or I was the only person there and I had to go to work, I might call my neighbor and say, hey, can you watch my kids? Or I have to find a place for my kids to go. And so that creates things makes things a little more complicated. And even if that doesn't happen, I don't want us to sit here and think that if people decide to go remote, that we're going to reduce COVID numbers in our towns. I got that. That's going to school is not increasing COVID numbers. So staying at home is not going to decrease them. And the inverse is not true of that either. So next slide, Madam Chair.
Dick just joined, by the way.
Okay. You got that, Mary Ann?
Yes, I do.
So really, these are the recommendations, the options that I'm asking you to consider right now. So we can certainly wait until the Tuesday meeting. If we wait until the Tuesday meeting and the decision's made to go remote, I think we'd be putting families at a really big disadvantage in terms of preparing for childcare, whatever it is they may need. So these recommendations, if you click on the next slide, there's 3 that I have out here. And these are just, so we can, option 1, we can just keep things as they are, and we don't have to make changes. We can let the chips fall where they may. We can see what the data ends up actually being. And when there is, and people ask this, what is the magic number? There is no magic number. It's, is there school spread going on? And can we no longer safely bring children into school and keep them from being exposed? So we can keep things as they are with no changes. We could decide to go full remote until January 19th. Now, January 19th, because that essentially is the school week of the 4th and the 11th. By the time you get to the 19th, you're 18 days after New Year's Day, which means anyone who is out there who might have been exposed, we should have seen a big spike. By the time we get to the 19th, that may have gone down. And I emphasize may because nobody knows. These are all guesses. But until the 19th, and that's for Bagnell, the middle school and high school. Meanwhile, Page, Sweetser, and Donahue would stay in hybrid. And the reason for that is because, again, West Newbury and Merrimack are able to do their contact tracing, and they'll know quickly who is a close contact, who's not a close contact. And you can see that play out in the numbers, right? You've had 2 at Page, 1 Sweetser, 1 at Donahue. You've had 7 at Bagnell. So there's that part. And then, and again, that's based on the ability of the towns to do contact tracing in the low numbers. And then the third option is just to say, all right, we're just going to wait till the 19th. We've seen this done in one of our neighboring districts who's been kind of lock and step with us doing hybrid and staying hybrid. They've decided to put everything on pause until the 19th just to see how it plays out. So those are the 3 options in the conversation that has to happen. If you go to the last slide, this last slide is, once you decide, if this decision is, okay, if it's anything but to keep things where they are, we need to know how we're going to proceed with cohort C. And Dr. Jarvis can talk about that in a little bit when we get to that. How are we going to proceed with athletics? Are we going to change anything or not? So I think if you go back to the last slide, Madam Chair, that's the question. Really, like, where does the school committee want to go with this?
All right, anyone want to have a discussion? Tell me what you guys think. Any questions?
So Dina, how do you want us to do this? Do you want us to all just speak up? Because I don't think you can see us all, or do you want to just ask us one at a time?
We can't see you all. Why don't I do that? Joanna?
So I'm very comfortable sticking with option 1, keep things where they are, because we haven't seen any evidence of school spread. The other thing is if we go remote until the 19th, and then we start seeing a whole bunch of students come down with COVID, now we have no idea what would have happened if we were actually in school. And then we might just say, look, our student numbers are increasing. We have to stay out of school. So I think the best thing to do is, since we're not seeing school spread at this time, is stay in school and then just reevaluate if we get into a situation where we're seeing school spread. But like, when you guys are talking about the numbers, I know they sound high, but I'm doing some quick calculations, and we're still talking about positivity rates less than 1%, which are well below what we're seeing, I think, for the state average. So I think we're still very safe in our districts. So I'm comfortable with option 1.
Thanks, Joanna. Emily?
Well, I agree with what Joanna said in terms of the lack of school spread, and I do feel like, for the most part, our you know, our teachers are doing an amazing job on all of the staff, not just the teachers, of keeping the kids safe. But I do have some really big concerns about what's going on in Groveland, and the lack of their willingness to get ahead of this, and that now people are having to, pressure is not the right word, but like, you know, ask them to get more on top of this is really concerning to me. So that is something I'm really struggling with. But also the other two questions that I have, and you know, you mentioned this, Justin, but the cohort C, so the kids who are in school 5 days, you know, how this impacts them, because I do feel like, you know, that is some of our most vulnerable population, and changing for them on a, because we might be worried about something that might happen basis really makes me very uncomfortable. And my other question is around the professional development days that would come with a shift to fully remote, because we've talked about that several times, and how that would play out if not the entire district is on the same page, because I feel like you can't, like, I know middle school and high school has had a chance to do some fully remote, but I don't think it's fair if you say to go fully remote to say to the diagonal teacher, it's like, oh, well, but you know, the other elementary schools aren't doing this, so you don't get the PD days, but then how you like parse that out in an equitable way is, I guess, a question I have.
Yeah.
I know that there are no good answers for any of this,
So let me, I think that's a couple bits of information that might be useful. So let me just say first, for the professional development piece, we talked about transitions. We know that Monday going back is cohort C's there, and teachers use that time to plan outside of what's been office hours. So yeah, we could shift another day potentially. I think the secondary, I don't think would need any time. Like the secondary already has been doing this in the past, so it's just a matter of them streaming, and the teachers would be coming to the classrooms. But certainly in elementary, this would be a significant shift. Dr. Jarvis, do you want to talk at all about just cohort C? So if you just explain that, what cohort C is, and kind of the state's view on this.
Sure. So thank you for having me today. So cohort C is our students that are eligible for receiving an education every day for in-person instruction. So that is in line with the guidelines from the outset of the school year offered by DESE, and that is to prioritize students. So the district, in response to that, has identified a cohort of kids who receive special education services and district programs as part of the high priority cohort of kids. So that comprises cohort C. And so along with that recommendation coming in from DESE, is to, regardless of full remote, and with exception of the state of emergency, they're giving districts latitude, or the latitude, to offer, or continue to offer in-person instruction for who are identified as high priority. So my recommendation is, in fact, that we would go to a full remote. We would still, I would recommend, still offer in-person instruction for students in district programs. In addition to that, we should also consider that we would still need to maintain evaluating students and offer other related services that may not be offered via internet, like physical therapy, for example. So that's kind of how I look at this, and and it can still be done in a safe way, of course. So the numbers of the students would be significantly reduced if we continue to operate our district programs for in-person instruction, if it was chosen to offer a remote, 100% remote modality of instruction.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Jarvis. Emily had a question.
Can I ask a follow-up question about Pentucket? So you're talking about things like OT, PT services that, and I would argue speech, because I know that that is something that is not effectively offered over Zoom. So that would mean those parents, if their students, if the decision was made for all students except for cohort C students to be remote for X number of days, that those students would have to be brought to the school to get their have access to their services?
So, so I think there could be an option. So I think some services render themselves very easily transferable to in-person or reading. Speech and language is probably one of those. It's teletherapy. It's not as good as in-person. Of course, nothing is, right? So, but certainly occupational therapy, it is really tough to do that remotely, especially with physical therapy. That's really tough. Reading instruction, for example, for small groups, reading instruction has proven to be pretty efficacious done now remote. Not quite as good as in person, of course, but there's still a high degree of progress in making remote instruction for reading. So what I would recommend is we would review this in the way of balancing out an offering of services and related services to provide a schedule and have a balance of some remote instruction and some in-person instruction, and then be able to offer recommendations to offer those services for parents to access, and then it would be up to them given the opportunity.
Again, so effectively, Dr. Jarvis, what you're kind of suggesting is what happened in the spring for some of those services, if we were to go fully remote.
So there's just, I think flexibility is the most important thing to keep in mind, because we really want to keep our services as robust as strong as much as possible. It's about flexibility, working with parents and working with kids and our providers. My only concern about in-person instruction remote would be it's still vulnerable to contact tracing in our workforce, an available workforce, given the event of contact tracing. That's my concern, because we could be at a tipping point where we don't have a workforce in the way of contact tracing. And we have no availability for substitutes. That too is a concern of mine, because there's a huge shortage of substitutes, and then the concern is safety at that point, maintaining distance from kids. We don't have enough staff to work with kids.
Okay.
I saw Lisa had a question for you.
In regards to special education and the implementation of IEPs, with our agreed to services, in the event that, people cannot perform job functions for one reason or another, does that result in compensatory services?
So when you say job function, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, maybe if the PP person can't work for a period of time, do those students get their PT? If they miss 2 weeks of service, do they get the 2 weeks back at some point? And is that gonna, does it become a steamroll where, that could happen to the OT or the speech or the reading specialist, if there's a whole bunch of close contacts, that creates a huge wave.
I see what you're saying. So yes, so that's a possibility, but also remote instruction. It's all about Compensatory Services is not a current and if the child's not making progress, whether it's a physical therapist that's on the contact list can work, or is offering services remotely. If the child's not making effective progress under those circumstances, compensatory services would be at hand. It's all effective progress on an individual level for students with compensatory. So when we have decision-making on this, and with our example with physical therapy, I don't know, I don't imagine there'd be effective progress that would be sustained if it was fully remote for extensive periods of time. I just don't think that would be the best way to offer that service.
Okay.
Emily, you had a follow-up question?
So I understand what you're saying, but you didn't get to the heart of my question, which is, so let's say my son has PT services on his IEP. He's not in a specialized program, but he gets physical therapy. And so if that school or all of the students end up being remote for a period of time, during that time, are you saying that the families, so in this case, my family, someone would have to get him to the school to receive those physical therapy services in order to access what he is been defined as like that's on his IEP. He needs this in order to make his adequate progress. But then you're saying somebody has to bring him to the school in order to receive those services, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's what I meant by flexibility. I'm sorry for not really describing that. So the flexibility part is that we could offer this service to parents, provided that they want to accept the in-person physical therapy instruction, or whether they want to just have it be remote or revert to a remote kind of scenario. So what we would try to do is make a schedule for parents based off what they're able to do and work that out as best we can. So we know that the in-person instruction, especially with physical therapy, is best delivered that way. So we have to be flexible in working that out with the parents to offer that said service. But could a range of service in person, it could be remote instruction, really real help.
Did he free?
Yeah.
Thank you, froze.
I think what I just heard him say, if I can just summarize, I think I've got this right. It's, so it is a possibility where parents, if there's a PT service that a parent,
Services and
that a parent might have to, like, if schedule, if a parent can, yeah, you're back on now, yes. But a parent would be able to bring their child, but it'd have to be scheduled out because you can't have everybody at the same time, that there wouldn't be transportation back and forth from the school. By the school, we don't have a mechanism to do that. That's effectively what you're saying. And some parents, Emily, to your point, I think are not going to be able to do that, right? Because those parents are going to be working. So what do you have? Yeah.
Right. And so again, that's my concern, is the ability for students to access the services that they need in order to make effective progress, whether it's in, with their PT, with their OT, with whoever really. That's my concern, because
Right. So that's why I think that the key word by using flexibility is that the district needs to be flexible to help parents access the service, and if they can choose not to access the in-person service in that way, but also have offering of remote instruction, whatever that related service is. So there'd be that range. It just have to be scheduled up.
Okay. Can I ask one more question about not related to this?
Sure.
Sorry, I forgot this when I was saying my other list of questions. So is there anything we can do to encourage Groveland to
Yeah. So yeah, sure.
on
So I don't think they're not on board. I think one of their challenges has been they've tried, I believe, several weeks ago, they posted and had contracted at one point with someone to help with contact tracing, and that ended up not working out. So the person's no longer there. So they're again left shorthanded. And all three towns, again, when they're overwhelmed, have access, and some towns just exclusively use the CTC to do their contact tracing, which is fine. It's just, Groveland has attempted, and my conversation today, I just I offered out some other possibilities that they could talk about, but again, that's each town's responsibility to work that out. I'm not. I'm happy to give resources, but it's not a field that I have any expertise in. So.
And my last question for you is, why don't we have families doing attestation forms for the kids that could help us with some of the direction for the contact tracing? That might say, like, I've traveled outside of Massachusetts, I've been in contact with someone who has been been known to be positive, or I've been tested in the past 10, 14 days. How come we don't have kids doing that?
I guess my answer to that was, what would you get differently on the paper? So if they're not supposed to send their child, what would we get differently on the paper, right? We actually saw this play out. I don't have the principals here, but we saw this play out where we were told, nope, I didn't go anywhere, until we found out that, yes, you in fact did. Actually, Diane is familiar with this. So so we've seen it played out. Like
100%.
Yeah.
The reason my kids ended up as close contact was because the parent wasn't like getting their
forthcoming.
kids tested when they should have been tested. But that maybe it brings it to the forefront of the parent's mind. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think about other things that we could
Sure.
do to help.
It's definitely something to think.
Yep,
to
absolutely.
Think about. Lisa, what are your thoughts on the options?
Okay, my thoughts are, I think it's a problem that Groveland is 6 days behind. I think that's gonna probably eventually get a snowball effect. It's unfortunate that the person that was gonna be able to do it couldn't do it. I think, the cohort C students, they have specific needs. The needs really need to be met in person. I would like to see them stay in school, but then there's the problem if there's not service providers available. So if there's nobody to work with them during the day, are the parents gonna be notified in the morning that that person's out, that person's gonna be out for 2 weeks? I think that's an issue. I don't want to have to call remote at the last minute and then everybody's scrambling to arrange, for an adult to be with their kids because they have to work full time. And I understand that there's not school spread, but I think, seeing what happened after Thanksgiving and knowing that we just had Christmas and people did travel and people did visit with people, because it's pretty obvious by just being on Facebook that, people got together and people didn't have masks on in most cases. I still think we should go remote, but I think maybe cohort C should remain in school, but I think there's still a problem with that scenario as well.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Chris Markhams? Sorry.
Hi, Dina, thanks. So just a couple quick things. First of all, because I don't think it can be said enough, I think it's Dr. B, your team, the teachers, the families, everybody deserves an incredible amount of credit for the success you've had in the school buildings, keeping this under control the way you guys have.
Thank you.
I think that needs to be said a lot. I think it shouldn't just be taken for granted.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I don't think the employees get nearly enough. I mean, it's not been easy, not by a long shot.
It's right. It takes every day making those decisions to actively do it. It shouldn't be taken for granted. I'm also glad that we're having these conversations regularly. I don't think you can have them enough. I think this is what you do, right? You have regular conversations as often as you think is necessary to reassess what's happening and make the best decision you can going forward. It doesn't mean that every single time you do it, it's a red alert. It just means you're taking a look at things and you're having a conversation, and conversations are good. My own feeling is that at this point, all we really have to do, at least speaking for me personally, is go on what we know. What we know right now is that we have not seen spread in schools, that we are seeing spread among families and somewhat in the community. So therefore, having them be at home more, where you're seeing the spread, and all that comes with it in terms of disruption to families and a disruption to school, doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems like you're actively putting them in the place where they're more likely at this point to spread it and contract it than they are now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of benefits from a health and safety perspective to that move, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of benefits. We know there aren't any benefits from an educational perspective from that move. It's going in the other direction. I completely get the urge to want to give families as much time to prepare by maybe doing it proactively, but the disruption that you're causing by doing it on a problem that you may or may not even have yet seems greater than the disruption of giving them short notice if you have to do it later. At this point in the pandemic, I think most families and most of us know that sudden changes are potentially going to be necessary and that we need to be prepared to shift on the fly. And that includes things like snow days that wouldn't ordinarily be snow days, or even days that become remote learning because of a serious staff issue. At this point, I'm really comfortable with where we're at until we get more data and can reassess. But it seems like we'd be going in the wrong direction right now if we were to preemptively go.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, did you have a follow-up question?
I did. It's more from like Dr. Jarvis. I was wondering if homework seems like to me 5 days a week, what would a day look like for students? Because then they probably wouldn't have their typical teachers in the building anymore. So they would just be dropped off the service and that would be it. It wouldn't be a full day for them.
Saying if we went full remote for cohort C.
Yeah, but if cohort C still went to school 5 days a week, they would just have services and nothing else?
So they have their teachers, so they would follow the.
I can answer that. They'd be the same as they're doing right now.
Okay.
Well, just as they would.
Don't worry, Dr. Jarvis, I took care of that for you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Wayne?
I'm pretty set right now on putting it on pause. Newburyport did it as other schools, and letting parents know as soon as possible. I'm not one for getting into trouble and back pedaling and saying, geez, we should have whatever. Well, yeah, and it's given them some opportunity. And I use looking at the numbers of the community, and I don't buy what you said, evidence can't show it. That by being home may be even worse than going to school. I don't happen to believe it from the same point. They're already home. They're only in school twice a week. So where does that leave us? And I've always thought to myself, somebody's going to make some hard decisions, and ones that an awful lot of people aren't pleased with, from seat belts to keep people safe, to helmets on motorcycles, to people wearing masks. We're talking 2 weeks now to put it on hold. I'm sure most of you watch TV as much as I do, and I don't know that the medical people can say it enough, whether it's Dr. Fauci and any number of others that said these 2 weeks are critical. Well, other schools, committees agreed. I think we should agree, put it on pause, and yes, it's a change, but it changes throughout the school year, and I'd rather be on the side of safe as we can be for now. And that's because I don't buy into being home. It's far more dangerous, and evidence shows that. I haven't read that, I've seen it from medical people. So I'm definitely put it on pause.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Chris Redding?
So, I guess respond to Wayne, that I don't think they're just thinking that kids staying home are gonna get them into trouble because they're gonna do stuff on those 2 days they're not in school. I think what they're saying is a more general thing, that kids staying at home are dangerous because they're not doing what they normally would, and the emotional aspects of these things. I think they've already been out of school close to 2 weeks, and then to extend it further, I think like just adds to that, in my opinion. So then I'm gonna go back to my remarks. I worry that just with the numbers that we have right now, that pulling the trigger and going fully remote is the response that we had in the spring, that we're saying, we can't control this, we don't know enough, we're worried about it. But what we've seen is by having the hybrid, people are taking the protocols that are necessary in school, and we haven't had school spread. And that's the reason we haven't had school spread, because we are keeping kids safe, masks on in the classrooms, you don't have those close contacts. So I really think that we need to keep with the hybrid at this point in time. I think it's what's best for the kids educationally, which is essentially what our primary goal should be. I think that option 2 is, there's no way I could ever vote for that, because I feel that that's just making a decision based upon the town you're in, and I don't think that that is what we as a district should be thinking about. I think we should be looking at the students in general. I'm very concerned about the special ed students not continuing to get what they have been getting, those kids who are in cohort C. Those kids have gotten to a point where they're in a routine, they've just had a break over Christmas break. So to extend that even further, then we're almost at a month where they're not in their typical routine, and I very much am concerned about that. I think we have to look at our numbers, and I know that Groveland is a concern. I would say that if Groveland maybe can try different ways of getting people, based upon the social media that's been going on and people not wanting us to go remote only, I think there would be some parents who might be interested in that job just to keep things going the way we are. I think we have to look at the science, we have to look at the numbers. We're keeping the kids safe in school, and so that is what I believe. My biggest concern, I think, would be the staffing issues. And I know, if you don't have the staff, then are we educating the kids even if they're physically in the building? So to me, that's where our decision needs to lie. And to me, that's more of an administrative decision. And maybe there's days where, in the fall or early December, where we had to go remote for different reasons, whether it was the building itself or, close contacts being high. I'd much rather make that decision for a couple days based upon staffing or numbers than to just say, okay, for the next 2 weeks we're shut down. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Chris. Marie?
I just have a quick question about cohort C, really quick first. If you do choose, if we were to go to remote, or if just certain towns were to go remote, and parents did opt to drive their child to get those services, how would we know that wouldn't contradict with the schedule of their remote learning? Like, the parents drive them to the school to get a service, but they're missing a math class during the ride or during the service. So, in some capacity, they're gonna miss something.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Okay.
That's likely to be, it's possible it might not, and we might be able to work out a schedule around that, but my guess would be that it would be a situation where if a student was really struggling in math, that you wouldn't schedule that time to be during when that student would be receiving math.
Flexibility is the biggest part of that. We're doing the best we can to schedule it so that doesn't happen.
And it's not an easy choice. But I have to say, like, the reason we went hybrid in the first place was for students, overall population of student mental health, and I think it's better for them to be in school personally. And right now, the numbers are alarming to me in Groveland. The contact tracing is very frightening to me, because as Emily said, you could not find out and have exposed exponentially more people in the time it's taking. But I don't know what control we have over that. I don't know if we should wait. I understand wanting to give parents notification as far in advance as we can. That's obviously the most practical. But also we don't have the data to tell us if it's going to double. The numbers right now are alarming to me for the schools mentioned. And I would, if anything, I'd be in favor of keeping the kids in the school. Keeping the kids in school and looking at the greater number of the population, I would say, across the board. But I would also amend that to say, again, not that I would want to do anything to any parents last minute, but if over the weekend we see that the numbers by Friday, say, Saturday, today's Tuesday, we see that the numbers have doubled in a particular town or something, I would be all on board with going remote in a particular town or a particular school. Because I don't feel, well, we did it for the high school, right? In the fall, we did it for 2 days. We took the safe route. And it turned out we were able to go right back, and that was great. So I don't think that we should shut down as a district. And I agree with what Chris said, like there is a continuity as a district, but we're in a pandemic, so that kind of doesn't apply to me here. I don't feel like all the children who are only going 2 days as it is should be shut down because of one particular school having high numbers. So I would say we should, with, to Chris Martin's point, you've done a phenomenal job so far keeping us in school. The staff has done an amazing job, and my vote would be to keep it as is unless the numbers increase and we know something further by Friday, Saturday, and then I would say absolutely do it by town to town on a school to school basis.
Yeah, and just to point out, I'm sorry, do I get to do this, Madam Chair? I think I'm just going to interrupt real quick and just say, just for the viewers, we do have a meeting on the 5th, Tuesday the 5th, where we'll be able to talk about those numbers. I don't know, and Diane Dardino's here, I don't know that on Thursday when those numbers come out, they may well have doubled, but I don't know that we will know as a school district which of those individuals are necessarily parents or staff, unless unless it's gone through Maven, and then we identify them as such. So there'll likely be a delay on that, but just if we do know that information, absolutely, we could have another one of these on Saturday or Sunday.
And Mr. Hodges.
Hi, I feel like I'm at the casino, and the dealer has asked me to bet or fold, and I need to see one of those cards in the flop before I can bet, but that card's not going to flop for me. So all of you know, because you saw me one night go back on a vote, I honestly felt that all kids should be in school 5 days a week, full schedules with everything, because their recovery rate nationally is 99.98%, even if they get the virus. However, I've been debating with myself, and one of the problems with debating yourself is you don't always get to win a debate with yourself. So I've actually come full circle. I'm betting that that card under there is something that I really don't want to see. I'm speaking pretty much on behalf of Groveland residents, which we seem to have been hit pretty hard. So if and when this comes to a vote, I'll be voting that we go fuller remote for a period of time that is under the guidance of the superintendent, till we can feel that we have a handle on this. There are way too many unknowns. And again, I have more questions than I will ever have answers. And I don't feel that at the Texas Hold'em table, I'm going to be winning very much. So I'm going to hold and request that we go fuller remote until the 19th and see that things just kind of level off. That might give me a little more comfort to come back. And again, for anyone that's gone 180 degrees, it's been me. I wanted kids in the classroom from day one, and now I'm saying I think we ought to stay put, go fuller remote for 2 weeks. until we see some concrete, better results. I'm also thinking that if Justin gets a hold of some information that's much more comforting than what we've been dealing with, well, then it's time for another emergency meeting. And yes, that is going to be disruptive to parents, but that's one of our jobs. That's one of our jobs. So that will be my vote today.
Okay, thanks, Dick. So, in my opinion, I think I agree with Marie too, and I thought options 2 would be a good option, just because we know that Groveland is, the kind of the wild card out of all of this, but I also know that we need our cohort Cs in school. I mean, I think I would probably now, and we are in a pandemic. Things aren't normal, like you can't, it's just not happening. And things are not easy, and I feel like I understand parents would like more notice about these things, and if we can give it, we absolutely would. But right now, there's no rules, no one knows, there's no precedent, like nothing, like we are it. So, I guess I would pick option 1 for now, but it could change in a dime, especially since we might not have the teachers to staff the schools, and we would have to go remote those days anyway, until we were able to do that. So, I mean, there's so much still on the table that could happen between now and Monday, or, Friday, or whatever it is. So that is my opinion right now. Joanna, you have a question?
Yes, I just want to say one more thing. So, I mean, I'm reading the votes, and right now, the way the votes are going, we're going to go remote. And the one thing I want to caution people about is if you make that decision to go remote, I don't know what metric you're going to use to go back to school. Because what are you saying, Justin? Are you saying like, we're going to go remote until the 19th guaranteed? Because there's a very high likelihood you're going to have more students with COVID by the 19th than you have today. So I don't want to be in this situation where on the 19th, we're saying, oh, well, it's more dangerous on the 19th than it was back on, December 29th, whatever our date is right now. And I'm very, very concerned that once we go remote, we will not get back in school for a couple months. And I think that is educationally very, very, very bad for our students. So do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually, my scorecard is reading a little bit differently right now, but that's okay. Well, we could, but yes, if we go until the 19th, the thought is that we'll see that surge. So you'll have the New Year's Eve, you'll have Christmas, all the people that traveled, you will have seen that huge increase. If there is an increase, which I think most people are reasonably expecting there will be. And the question I think you're bringing up is, okay, well, that already happened. We saw Thanksgiving at 52, and now we're seeing after Thanksgiving, we're at 135. So our new baseline is 300, an okay baseline. And to me, I still go back to, it depends. Like if we're comfortable that contact tracing is delayed. I know ideally contact tracing would be picked up and we'd be on top of it. But if we're comfortable that there is no school spread going on, that those things aren't happening, I think we're in good shape. If we're looking at that bottom line number of active cases and saying, okay, well, 600 is too many active cases, like there is no magic number. And I completely understand what you're saying. I think it is reasonable for us to expect that our new baseline will be higher than 135 when we get to January 19th. I don't know. What I don't know is what will the contact tracing look like at that point? That's the part. We know that more cases mean bigger strain on the people doing the contact tracing. We know that since it's an issue, the towns are looking at trying to figure out ways to do this. So it's, that's I don't think it's unreasonable to think either that if we do remote for those 2 weeks, and things stay the way they are, we've been learning as we go. I think the time when I said, we took those 2 days off to figure out the data, at the same time, I was honestly thinking to myself, this is a smart thing to do because you're waiting for the data, but it makes no sense because school is safer. Like it's safer for the children to be in school than it would be for them to be at home for all the reasons we've stated here. I think just in this time with the contact tracing being high, that's the fly in the ointment. That's the difference to me. Not that it's one way or the other. It's just that to me creates complexities. But you've all said it, and I don't think it can be overstated enough. Our ability to field a staff is the unknown factor. We will not know that until school starts. There's no way for us to know that because it's not that people are going to withhold information. They're going to find out Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're going to find out that they were a close contact, and we're going to be pivoting. And I think to Chris Markin's point, exactly what you said. Yeah, I mean it is that part of parents and families. If the decision is to maintain where we are, they need to be okay with this. This could turn on a dime. Marie and Chris, I'm stealing some of your language, but it's going to turn on a dime, and they're going to have to be okay with that. None of us are okay with the pandemic, but it's just a situation we're going to have to accept, and we're going to have to put in a buffer for the faculty to make that shift. Either way. I don't know if I directly answered your question. Was that a good enough response, Joanna?
I mean, it really wasn't. I think that my issue is that I don't know what metric you're going to use to get yourself back into school. And that's where I have the problem, which is you're saying we're not seeing any school spread. So, say we go remote for 2 weeks, then we have more students with cases. Well, it's obviously not school spread at that point. So how can you then say, well, we're having no school spread, so it's safe to go back to school? I don't know how you're going to be able to tell people it's safe to go back to school on the 19th if the committee's saying it's not safe to be in school right now, where we're seeing very few cases in the school still, and we have no school spread going on. It's like I'm coming from a college environment where we had many, many more cases on a college campus than what we ever have had here. We have people living in communal situations. We have cases spreading in the dorms. We know that. But yet we did not see any spread happen in the classroom. And we had very, very aggressive contact tracing, testing every week. So we had the data which said there was not any spread going on in the classroom. All the spread was going on in the learning and in the living environments, but not in the classroom. And I think that's why I'm so comfortable with having students in the classroom, because I just went through an entire semester teaching on campus, having students in my classroom who I know had COVID, because they would then email me and said, hey, I had COVID, but we didn't have any spread in the class. So, I feel a lot safer just because of the fact that I lived this all fall. And I think that you really have to be cognizant of the fact that once you go remote, how do you go back to school in 2 weeks when the likelihood is you're going to have many more cases in the community and many more students with COVID than you have right now?
Okay, I have questions. First I have Chris, then I have Wayne, and then I have Emily.
So just,
I think it was me, Chris.
Go ahead, Chris, sorry.
So to kind of piggyback on what Joanna's saying, I will share that personally, one of my daughters got COVID from work. She was sick. She was in the basement. We all did the proper thing. None of us tested positive. There was some contact tracing. Thank you to Diane for working with that. And that nobody ended up getting sick. And I've heard multiple stories of friends who have been in that same situation over the past few weeks. I do think it's interesting that up until now, we really haven't had many personal contacts who have had COVID or been in quarantine or anything. But I do think that a lot of what is happening with people is there is that contact. She got it at work. She works at Panera. She does the drive-through. So who knows? Nobody else there tested positive. So, it is happening. It's at a larger number. My girls weren't in school between when they had exposure to when, they went right into quarantine. But I still feel that even if they had, because if we hadn't known, they're in school, they're wearing masks, they're social distancing, they're, doing whatever they need to do. So I think we have to look at some of what is happening, and that school provides that environment that is going to hopefully keep them safe and keep the spread from going. I do know that, I'm really concerned that we shut down for fear of is the same response we had as a society last March. And that I think, like I said before, my bigger concerns is if we don't have the staffing in place to keep the kids safe and keep continuing to be educated. That's my concern at this point in time.
Wayne?
I'm somewhat frustrated. I don't know how anybody in this board can project that Wayne Adams or anybody else on this board on the 19th of January, given other data known full well, if these medical experts are right, because there is a surge, how somebody can say how I will feel and how I will vote at that time, because it's not correct. And I'm just wondering with my frustration, how many times are we going to continue to go around and have the people continue to reiterate their thoughts? I, however, don't think that it's going to go hybrid remote, according to the votes, if that makes some people feel better. But I think many of us have put on the table things that a lot of us knew anyways, but we all have certain opinions. We all have different affiliations with their children, families, etc. We look at it from different points of view, different perspectives. And again, and Justin, Dr. Bartholomew, has said no less than 3 times they're safer at home. Once again, I want to see that from a medical stance, particularly since they're home 3/5 of the week anyways. And then I was told, well, we're really talking about their mental well-being. Well, yes, we are. There's nothing good about it. We're talking pause 2 weeks. And I don't know why we wouldn't do what Dick said anyways. Let's everybody go back to school, because we have several people believe we're much safer at school. I say we open up the school and we go full-time for everyone, because even though we've never had the pandemic before, we've never had COVID virus, we seem to have a very valid predictability of what it's going to do down the road. I apologize, but I'm going to once again say, I'm gonna safety issue, our responsibility first and foremost, unlike what somebody said, is I believe it's our responsibility and obligation to keep our kids safe first. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Emily?
I just wonder if there was any, I know the staff didn't know what is happening next week until next week, because that's how this works. But has there been more impact on one staff than the other? Or has it been, do you feel like pretty even?
You're talking throughout the different schools?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the students, I know that not everybody lives in town, and so that's not something that we can judge by these numbers, how it's going to impact the staff. But I just was wondering if, from what you had seen, I know you said it's not spreading between the staff in the buildings, which, again, I live it, but I just was wondering if it had impacted one building or some buildings more than others.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Yeah, use these numbers to predict that in the same way we can.
Sure, no, not in this, in the month of December, no. So in the month of December, we have 1 Page, none Bagnell, none at Sweetser, none at Donahue. The middle school and high school are where the numbers have been. So we have 3 at the middle school and 3 at the high school. So prior to this, with close contacts, Diane, I'm going to say this, I think this might be right. but I think it went the same way our numbers do with students right now. That at the high school, did the high school have the highest number of, I'll have to open up that sheet. I can't do that right now. I know Bagnell was very high up there with close contacts. And West Newbury and Merrimack Elementary Schools were at the bottom.
That's true. Bagnell was significantly higher than any of the elementary schools in all of the numbers and data.
Chris Morgan, you had a question? Or-
Yeah, just very quickly. First of all, I've not known everybody here very long, but I've never gotten the sense from anybody on here for 1 second that they have anything other than the best interests of our kids and teachers here and keeping them safe. I think we're all relatively on the same page there. I just wanted to very quickly back up the point as it was made. Doing a district-wide move like this is a much bigger, more drastic action potentially. If you're talking about full remote, steering that ship all at once is much harder. And we shouldn't take it as a given that it will be easy to turn the switch back on when it's time potentially to come back. That there could be a whole host of things and problems that present themselves or reasons that are found to delay that move later on. You just can't assume that it's going to be a simple process. It can end up being very much more complicated than it feels like it would be right now. And right now, it feels like Dr. Bartholomew and his team do have the flexibility, what Dr. used earlier, to use targeted interventions where necessary by school or by program things. If there are problems that do happen, they have the ability to sort of attempt to isolate those and treat them and not necessarily disrupt multiple schools across 3 communities, and then maybe that's something, and this board goal should be held on to for really when we are 100% sure that we know, we need to take that. And that's it. Sorry if I reiterate everything.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So does anyone want to make a motion or? Chris, ready?
I'll make a motion that we remain in the hybrid process and ask administration to update us if there's any information that comes to light that would change that decision.
Second.
Got Wayne on that.
Any discussion? Okay. Oh, Emily?
Oh, I just want to make sure that like the administrators, the people who have to like juggle all these pieces once we make this decision are comfortable moving forward with that, knowing that this could change on Monday.
Yeah, so let's go. I appreciate that. I would say we have every single day been, having to flip in a second. So yeah, we don't have the data right now. We don't have a way to project the data. Diane is I think we sadly talk on a daily basis because she has on all 3 towns. She has an idea of what's going on. So yeah, when we have that, but things, as you all know, things happen quickly. And so it's not students who are always just here. And I think Chris mentioned this with her story. Like it's not something that was necessarily happened here. It was something that might have happened on the outside and came into the towns. And for staff, that's obviously a piece. Like we wouldn't know about that necessarily until we were notified. And just so everyone here knows, like there's a process that Diane, if there is a close contact, Diane ends up being the point for that. And then they verify that person is indeed a close contact. It can't just simply be, I'm a close contact. So I think we are all set to do what we've been doing since March or February really, and that's just to when we have to move, we got to move. When we have to adapt, we adapt. And I think so. In Bagnell, I know Mr. Day's been doing a great job there. He communicates quickly. His teachers communicate with him very well. So he's able to tell me, like, this is their situation. And then we start having the conversations about, do you have to shut down a grade? Do we have to tell that group? And that, for the viewers, that's a reality, right? If at elementary in particular, that might just be that, hey, tomorrow, 5th grade isn't going to happen. Like, you're going to have to, 5th grade is going to be remote. And that's might just be the way it has to go. But again, there is no correct model. There is no correct approach. Everything is, you think through this carefully, the way you have all spoken about this today. You think about this carefully. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the situations? And this is what we do on a daily basis in order to make the best decisions for our 3 towns. So yeah, we'll make that adaptation and move.
Okay, if anyone doesn't have any question or any more to add, we'll roll call vote. Emily,
Yes.
Dick,
No,
Lisa,
No,
Joanna,
Yes.
Wayne,
Oh,
Chris Markins,
Yes.
Chris Redding,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
and I will say yes. So I believe the yeses have it.
Mary Ann, the official.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do, she said.
Okay, so we will stay in hybrid and play it day by day.
Yep. And again, we have it. I see
I'm
Chris
sorry, everyone.
Redding has her hand up. And I just, again, mentioned, you all know this, that there is a meeting next Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
So the only thing that I have to say is that I think there are parents and there are staff who are out there and are concerned. Either way we make this decision, I think there's parents who are concerned about their children not going into school, and children who are concerned about their children going into school. I'm sure the staff, so I'd like to say that I think that administration has been great throughout this whole process. I think that if there are students whose parents feel that they should not be attending school because of any concerns, I would like to think that the administration will be understanding of any of those decisions that families might make. Same thing with the staffing. If there's concern specifically with staffing, I know that it's, we're running low numbers wise, but, we still have to understand that they have family concerns, that we have, perhaps the way that their work is right now, they have concerns with, but, that this is a very fluid situation. And I think, what I said earlier is school committee is to make sure that the education is the best. Certainly not discounting any safety issues, but I think trying hybrid at this point is our best option at getting the kids the best education all around. So that's just, if there's families who feel otherwise, I think, just work with your administrators and your teachers.
And I think it's important, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris. I think it's important, just what you said. Absolutely. I'm sure you all receive, as do Mr. Conway and I and Dr. Jarvis, a lot of emails that are polarizing in both directions. And here we are sitting in the middle. But for the message, and Mr. Conway can, if you want to speak to this, you can, but I'll just say, for those parents who do want to keep their children at home, it's not an immediacy. It all is dependent on numbers. We do not have the ability, as we've said before, if all of a sudden there was a swarm of 5th grade to move to remote, we don't have a swarm of 5th grade teachers sitting there to receive them. So, and I believe the state has allowed up to 4 weeks to help with those transitions. So it's not an easy thing. If someone says, and I know some high school students have reached out to Ms. Buteri about this, said, hey, I've just decided I'm going to go remote for the next few months. Yeah, that's not how it works. Like, there's a process that it entails, and it may be that someone has to do online only until there is a spot for them in that remote setting. And Mr. Conway, I think that's accurate. I think that's, as we move further into this, that's more of a reality. And when someone might ask, well, that means the students in the class, those numbers are smaller. That's true. but we can't necessarily just consolidate and then, because it's spread out between 3 towns.
Yeah, I mean, so the impact of that, if they were, 10 kids from a grade level across the district who said, oh, and their parents said, we want to be remote now. There is no additional remote teacher waiting for them. We have none of those slots available. In order for that to happen, we would have to consolidate instead of having, 8 sections of 3rd grade across the district. We'd have to make it 7. So one of those teachers would have to take on that remote role, and the kids they had in their class would have to be divvied up to other teachers. And then you're really being very disruptive to our coming to school as well. So there's no win here. I think Dr. Bartholomew did it right on the head. We have a lot of polarizing thoughts and opinions, and we often sort of get stuck in the middle of it, trying to manage that. But to change and give people a robust remote option beyond what is currently here is not as easy as some may feel it should be. That would be a very challenging thing to do. It certainly cannot be done in a week. It would take multiple weeks to be able to make those shifts. And it would be very disruptive to other kids who did not make that decision. And I think that's something we need to remember and think about. And that's at the elementary level. At the secondary level, it becomes nearly impossible to do. It would be a complete rehaul of scheduling and so forth, and very disruptive. Now, as we work with our teachers in implementing some changes coming forward, there's more live streaming available, there's opportunities for kids to engage with that. But I think to Ms. Redding's point, if a family says, I don't think my kid is safe going to school, I'm not sending them, we're not coming after you for doing that. We respect your individual choice to make that choice. Just know that we may not have the support resources available to you that you think you should have. We, as the committee voted today to continue on with hybrid, that is where the vast majority of our focus is in making sure, and then supporting the students who had made a decision to be remote at the onset. And the state does give us, it's 6 weeks. We can go between 4 to 6 weeks to, if a family needs to make that choice to be remote, we can make that change, but we can't do it quickly like that. So those are challenges we face, and that, if that does happen, know that it impacts a lot more people than just the individual people making those choices. Yeah. There are massive implications to it.
Yeah, and so I absolutely, and I think everyone here, you all understand that it's a little more complicated than if I just have my own family in a vacuum and I want what I want for my kid. It's just not, it's not that simple, even though you may think it is, and I wish it were. But I do want to just thank everybody again. I know Chairwoman Trotta for being able to put this and being flexible with shifting this around. But I really, really do appreciate the thinking out loud conversations and the way this meeting was run. I thought was just done fabulously, where people were able to give their perspectives and their opinions. And I think, knowing you all, I know we can walk away this knowing that we agree to disagree. We have different perspectives, but at least there's that respect for each other. And I think that's good. I think that's just a really important feature of the work all of you are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and just also one thing, I'm just, because we're maintaining where things are, everything else stays where it is as well. Cohort C athletics, we just keep on rolling.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Emily? Lisa?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Chris Redding?
Yes.
Chris Markins? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy New Year.
everyone.